So what we'd like to dive into right now is really being able to identify what are some of the indicators. We know that there are sometimes behaviors or indicators that someone may be exhibiting that could help raise that red flag of concern that they might be experiencing some sort of anxiety, stressor, or even depression. Can you all talk to me a little bit about what are, in our viewers, that what are some of those behaviors and indicators that could potentially indicate someone might be experiencing these challenges?
I think one huge thing is just if you see a huge change in your youth's behavior, in your child's behavior, if they typically act in a certain way and all of a sudden you start to see that they're, lacking interest in things that they used to have an interest in, or things are causing them to tense up that didn't used to make them tense up, or seeing that kind of that more anxiety show up in areas that historically have just not been there for them. I think, again, going back to the isolation and the loneliness, obviously, if they're separating themselves from their family, from their friends, from activities that typically have brought them joy, I think that's a huge indicator that something's going on. Whether that is actual mental health, whether that's just a huge stressful factor in their life, whether they're interacting with other kids that are maybe more negative influences on them. I think that looking out for that huge shift in behaviors and shift in what they typically have been known to do can be a huge indicator that something's going a different direction.
I would agree with Molly. And what I hear parents say is that when kids are retreating a lot, the isolation thing is really an indicator on them withdrawing from the family and or their other friends, other relationships that they have. That the technology issues and the distractions there can really foster that isolation as well. And so, yeah, the pandemic did contribute a lot to that, and it has been getting worse.
I think one of the biggest questions I get from parents are what's typical teen behavior and what's something that's concerning? Because teens are going to be moody at times and they are going to be withdrawn at times, right? So if you think your teenager wants to hang out with you all the time, they're not. Um, but if they're withdrawing more than usual, like you both have referenced, one of the things I especially look for is are they pulling away from things they otherwise really enjoy, right? So if your teen doesn't want to go to a family dinner, okay, maybe that's just being a teen. But if they don't want to go spend time with one of their closest friends, that raises an awareness at a higher level. Um, One other thing I would add to what Molly and Marie stated is academic performance is a solid indicator, right? And we're talking about a change. If a kid is normally a BC student and they're dropping down into D's and F's, right? That raises awareness that something else is going on. So looking for those kind of indicators helps to know, at least recognizing warning signs where you might start asking some more questions.
That's great. No, thank you all so much. In addition to that, are there recent examples, maybe anecdotally, that you could help share a little bit for our viewers that would help shed light a little bit more on one, maybe some specific case studies or examples that you've seen in addition to like academics or over and above some of the pandemic impacts that we've seen, that as a community member or a teacher or maybe a parent that might be viewing this segment, that could, they could help maybe apply to their own lives and maybe be able to help recognize in the community more at large. Are there case studies or examples that maybe you can help share? Obviously, we want to be mindful and respectful of privacy with different case studies, but anything that you can maybe help shed light on a little bit more, just to help bring that to light for our viewers.
Yeah, I mean, one that comes to mind that I think just demonstrates, as Mike was saying, just the stress that our youth are under, is that in one of our programs, we had a youth that just stopped going to school, and she was a really good student and was really succeeding, and very abruptly stopped going to school, isolated, pulled away from her family, pulled away from typical things that she enjoyed, and she was referred to our program, and through being able to talk to a professional and be able to have that safe space, it came out that she was just getting severely bullied in the public school system, and that there are youth that were really targeting her, and the impact that that can do to one's mental health. We see again going to the media of what people can do behind a keyboard and what they will say behind a keyboard is very very difficult for anyone to handle, but let alone a 16-year-old who's still kind of finding their identity in this world. And so as we identified coping tools and was able to discuss the bullying that was going on in that school, she was able to return back and had the right coping tools to be able to navigate that situation. And so I think it can just be one triggering event that is not just a small thing; it's actually quite huge. And what that can do to a youth is pretty monumental.
Yeah, I would add that for a teenager, perception is reality, right? So, am I pretty enough? Am I good enough? Am I successful enough? And the people around them would probably say yes, yes, yes. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the teenager is really believing and experiencing about themselves. I have a teenage daughter. She is drop dead gorgeous, beautiful, and yes, I'm bragging. But she doesn't always think that about herself. And you look at her objectively and you're like, what are you talking about? But her perception is her reality if she's feeling insecure about something, especially if you're comparing to other images, social media where everybody looks superficially fantastic. Those comparisons really matter to our teens, and they take it to heart more than I think we sometimes recognize.
I would add to that when other teens have insecurities, how they make themselves feel better is to maybe say comments to other teens that will make them, even though they, it's false facts, but to them it's factual because someone else said it, that it's a peer that they look up to, it they like, it's now become fact, even though it's not accurate.
And the things that teenagers are wanting more than anything, I mean, they're struggling with isolation and bullying and comparison and all of that, but they're really looking for community and a sense of belonging. And that's what we hear a lot, is that when parents are talking to us about the way that their kids are feeling or what they're seeking, teens are looking for groups sometimes that are not the best influence on them. So the sense of belonging kind of leads them down a path where they are also just attaching themselves to groups or an organization or people that are also struggling, and then they're all struggling together.